Okay, we're going to go ahead and finish up DSMA 10, solving quadratic equations. So again, as a reminder, we first have to make sure that we are in standard form. In other words, all of the terms have to be on one side with equal on the other side. Excuse me, with 0 on the other side. And it does not matter which side. It can be on the left side or the right side, but you just have to make sure that all the terms are on one side and the 0 on the other side. Then we're going to factor what we have. And at that point, we're going to use what we call the zero factor theorem. And that is just that if we have like two binomials equal to 0, in order to multiply two items and get 0, one or the other has to equal 0. So either the first one's equal to 0 or the second one's equal to 0. So for us to find the solution, we go ahead and set them each equal to 0. So remember, a solution is going to be, and we're going to tie this all together in chapter 3, but the solution is where the function crosses the x-axis. So these are your x-intercepts. All right, so this problem asks us to solve. You can see that we have something factored on the left-hand side, but the problem is we have this 3x on the right-hand side. So we can't just grab 2 and -6 because we don't have a 0 on the right. And so what we're going to have to do is bring this 3x over to the other side. Well, now we have all kinds of craziness. So we need to go ahead and FOIL, combine like terms, and then factor again. Okay, so we are now, well, we're not quite in standard form, but we at least have all the terms on the left-hand side. So let's go ahead and FOIL on this side. We have x squared plus 6x minus 2x minus 12 minus 3x is equal to 0. So we're going to combine like terms. So I have a 6x, a -2x, and a -3x. So I need to combine all of those. So that would be 6 minus 5, or plus 1x, minus 12 is equal to 0. All right, now I'm in standard form. So now I can go ahead and factor. So I need factors of -12 that sum to that 1 in the middle. So I would have x plus 4 and x minus 3, right? If I look at my factors of -12, and of course I want the largest number to be positive, I would have -1 times 12, -2 times 6, and -3 times 4. And so the -3 and the positive 4 would work for me because -3 times 4 gives me -12, and -3 plus 4 gives me the 1, or the 1x in the middle. Okay, so now I'm good to go. Now my function is factored, and I can just set each of these equal to 0. Now at this point, if you don't want to write this anymore, that's fine. By the time you finish your homework, you will be experts at solving quadratic equations, and you'll see right away that you have -4 and +3. So you'll get used to that after a little bit. All right, and so those are my solutions, -4 and +3. All right, let's see, we have solved the equation. Everything, we're in standard form. Everything is on the left-hand side, all of the terms, and 0 on the right. But I haven't really been saying it, but I've been looking at it. We have to make sure that we look for a greatest common factor. So we've not been factoring with an x to the third power, right? Our toolbox right now, we've been dealing with x squared unless we have 4 terms. So notice that I have an extra x in each of these. So I need to go ahead and pull that x out. I also need to check the numbers, but the first number was just 1. So, all right. So that leaves me x squared minus 11x plus 10. Okay, so now I need to factor the inside, but I have to leave that x out front as I factor the inside. So if I come over here, I need factors of 10 that would sum to 11. And so that is going to be 1 times 10, right? But I need negative 11. So therefore I would need negative 1 and negative 11. So let's go ahead and pop those in. So I have x minus 1. Oops, not 11. Look at me. 10. Sorry. I noticed as I had already started factoring or started to FOIL in my head, and I saw that that was not going to work because 1 times 11 was not going to give me 10. All right, I apologize there. So over here, I need a negative 1 and a negative 10 because when I multiply those together, I get the positive 10 on the end. When I add them together, I get the negative 11 on the inside. So it's always good once you factor to at least check the outer and the inner. So you've got an outer of negative 10x plus the inner, which is negative 1x, and that gets me back to the negative 11x in the middle. All right, so at this point, I actually have 3 answers. So when you have the original polynomial in standard form, if your largest exponent is a 2, then you have 2 solutions. If your largest exponent, like in this case, is a 3, then you are going to have 3 answers. All right, so we've got our first one is going to be x equals 0. There's nothing else we have to do. Here we have x minus 1 equals 0 or x equal 1. And then here we have x minus 10 equals 0 or x equal to positive 10. So all 3 of these are a solution to my equation here. And so what happens is, I'm going to like totally exaggerate this, but we'll let 10 be way out here. Our function is going to look, oops, not like that. Hold on. I'm getting this all mixed up. Sorry about that. Okay, let me try again. Not like that. How did that happen? All right, you guys might not get a picture at this rate. Apparently, I keep hitting the wrong buttons. Okay. So I have 1 and I have 10. And I'm trying to draw this graph. It's going to go up like this, down like this, and back through. So it's going to cross 0 right here. It's going to cross positive 1. And then it's going to come over here and cross positive 10. Now that's totally exaggerated, but that's what it's kind of a Loch Ness monster looking thing. All right, let's try. All right, this is a challenging one. It says solve. It's in standard form. I've got all of my terms on the left-hand side. I have a 0 on the right-hand side. I am going to check because these numbers are big. So I'm going to see if I can pull anything out of there, but there is no hope. I have 21, which is 3 times 5, but then I have 17, which is prime, and then I have 8, which is even. So there's nothing that I can bring out. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to use either the box method or the AC method. I'm going to go ahead and use the AC method. So I'm going to take 21 times negative 8. Well, that gives me a negative 168. Big number, but that's okay. We can do this. So I do know that my bigger number in the factors needs to be positive because I want a positive 17. So let's see what we've got here. So I could have negative 1 times 168. That's I can also divide by 2. That would give me 84. 3. Oh, yeah, 3 goes in there. All right, I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to shut off the video a minute. Okay, so what I did is I took 168 and I just kept dividing by each number. I divide it by 2, I divide it by 3, I divide it by 4. It's not divisible by 5, so I skipped 5. I divide it by 6, I divide it by 7, divide it by 8, and I think I'm close to being done here. I think that's it. So now what I need is when I add, because all of those multiply to give me negative 168, but I need them to add, right? I need to add them together and get a positive 17. So I think that's going to be right here, negative 7 and positive 24, right? Because if we multiply those two, we would get negative 168. If we add them together, we would get the plus 17 in the middle. All right, so let's go ahead and do the AC method. So I've got 21x squared. Instead of writing the 17, I'm going to write negative 7x plus 24x, and then minus 8 equals 0. And so if you're doing the box, it's the same thing, right? That would be the 4 boxes. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and combine these terms. I'm going to factor by grouping. If I look at the first 2 terms, looks like I have a 7x in common, and that would leave me 3x minus 1, right? 7x divided by 7x is 1, not 0. So negative 7x divided by 7x is going to give me negative 1. Then I have 24x and negative 8. So the first term's positive. I'm going to go ahead and pull an 8 out of there. That leaves me with 3x minus 1. Again, negative 8 divided by 8 is negative 1. Don't get rid of it completely. Okay, so now I have 3x minus 1 because that's what's in common to both of them. And that leaves me with 7x plus 8. So we are going to get kind of awful solutions, but we don't really have to do anything with these fractions. We're just going to find them. So we've now factored. Let's go ahead and check our work real quick. Let's FOIL. So 3x times 7x gets me to the 21x squared. Then I'm going to do my outer terms. 3x times 8 gives me 24x. My inner term is minus 7x. So that's going to give me the 17x that's in the middle. Good, and correct sign. And then negative 1 times 8 gives me a negative 8 at the end. So now I can go ahead and set each of these equal to 0. So I get 3x equals 1, or x equal to 1/3. And then over here, I get 7x equal to negative 8. Divide both sides by 7. And I get negative 8 over 7. Now, I know that that is, usually we would change that to a mixed number. It's an improper fraction, but in algebra we don't. We just kind of leave it. So our 2 solutions, even though they're not pretty, is positive 1/3 and negative 8 over 7. All right, so that's one of the hardest ones in the DSMA 10 homework, because we not only have to use the hardest factoring, either the box method or the AC method, but we also then end up with some kind of a big number, and then at the end dealing with fractions. Okay, so this one is a mess. We have solved the equation by factoring. We've got all kinds of stuff going on here. We have 2 terms on the left. We have 2 binomials on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and move everything over to the right. We haven't done this yet, but let's go ahead and try. So we're going to subtract 23 from both sides, and we're going to add 23x to both sides. All right, so let's see what we're going to have here. 0 equals 5x plus 2, and then x minus 1 minus 23 plus 23x. Okay, so we have to go ahead and FOIL because we've got to get all these terms. Why did I write a 5? That's supposed to be FOIL. Okay, my brain or my hand was ahead of my brain or something. Okay, so I have 5x squared minus 5x. Okay, then we have plus 2x minus 2 minus 23. This is going on forever. Plus 23x. Whew. Okay, let's combine like terms. So we have 5x squared. What do I have here? I have negative 5 plus 2, negative 5x plus 2x plus 23x. So that looks like plus 20x. And then finally, I have negative 2 and negative 23. So I'm going to have negative 25. All right, so let's look at that together. I had a negative 5x, a plus 2x, and a plus 23x. So that gave me 25x minus 5x, or 20x. And then I had negative 2 and negative 23. Okay, so let's factor what we have left. So just looking at this, I am thinking, oh no, this is going to be one of those big problems, and I'm going to have to use the box or the AC method. But at second glance, I see that I need to do the greatest common factor first. There's a 5 in common to all of these. Whoops. All right, wait a minute, let me fix that. Okay, so again, the 5 needs to stay out front, and I can factor what's left, but this is a really nice one. It has a 1 in front of the x squared, and so I really just need factors of negative 5 that sum to 4. So that is going to be x plus 5 and x minus 1. Let's double check. So 5 times negative 1 gives me the negative 5. And then 5x minus 1x gives me the 4x in the middle. Okay, now, we haven't really looked at one like this. A couple problems ago, we had an x out front. And so we were able to set that x equal to 0. But with this one, we have a 5 out front. Well, it doesn't make any sense to try to make 5 equal 0. That doesn't make any sense. And remember, I told you we're going to have as many solutions as we have the largest exponent. Well, our largest exponent is x squared here, and so we only want 2. So we would actually get negative 5 from this binomial and positive 1 from this one. And that is going to be the answer. So the 5 out front does not affect our solutions. It does make it easier for us to factor, but the only way it affects our solution is if it also has a variable with it. Okay, also, we haven't looked at this before either. Sometimes they have x equal to, and then sometimes they have what we call a solution set with these squiggly brackets. I think they're called braces. And so we just do the same thing, though. We put negative 5 and positive 1 inside the solution set. Okay, so we have x minus 1 times x plus 3 all equal to 12. So we kind of have a mess. We need to move everything over to one side. So I'm going to move the 12 over here. Again, it doesn't matter, except I say it doesn't matter, but we really want our x squared to be positive. So since the binomials are on the left, I'm going to move everything to the left. That one problem, the binomials were on the right, the parentheses, and so I moved everything over there. But okay, so let's FOIL. We've got x squared plus 3x minus x minus 3 minus 12 equal to 0. Because remember, we need everything on one side. We have to have a 0 on one side. So then we have x squared. Let's see, 3x minus x gives me plus 2x. Negative 3 minus 12 is negative 15. And so now I can factor. Let's see here. So looks like I need a 3 and a 5. It's going to be plus 5 and minus 3. And you're welcome to go through your process. We're looking for factors of negative 15 that sum to positive 2. And so 5 times negative 3 would give me the negative 15. And then negative 3x plus 5x would give me the positive 2x on the inside. So now I know here I would have negative 5 if I set x plus 5 equal to 0. If I set x minus 3 equal to 0, I get positive 3. So those are my answers, negative 5 and positive 3. And sure enough, I have 2 answers because I have the exponent here of 2. Okay, last problem for this section. So we're going to do a little physics here. We have an object is thrown upward from the top of a 160-foot building with an initial velocity of 144 feet per second. The height h of the object after t seconds is given by the quadratic equation height equals negative 16 times squared, this is in seconds, so t squared, plus 144t plus 160. Whew. All right, this is all tied to, the negative 16 is tied to us being on Earth and having a certain gravity. The middle is tied to the velocity, the initial velocity as we throw the object. And then the 160 is tied to the height when we first throw the object. But of course, you don't have to know all that. They're going to give you the equation. So we want to know, so basically what happens here is somebody's on top of a building here, and they decide to throw something off the building. All right. And so it goes up in the air first, and then it starts coming down. And so there's a certain height. So this person's standing at 160 feet above the ground because they're standing up on a building. And so it's going to go up first and then come back down. So when it says, when will the object hit the ground, that is going to be when the height is 0, because it's going to come all the way back down to the ground. So the height is going to be equal to 0. All right, so we now have a quadratic equation we can solve. Now, me personally, I do not want to multiply negative 16 times 160 and try to factor. And so what I'm going to do first, I know that 16 goes into 16. I know that 16 goes into 160. So I'm going to double check and see if 16 goes into 144. Well, actually, it does. It goes in 9 times. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pull out the greatest common factor of negative 16. Now, we have to be careful because it's negative. So the first term is now going to be t squared because I divided by negative 16. So negative 16 divided by negative 16 gives me 1. In the middle, I had 144 divided by negative 16. Whoops. So that's actually going to give me a negative number, right? It's positive 144 divided by negative 16. So I get negative 9t. And then finally, I have 160 divided by negative 16, which gives me negative 10. All right, so now we can factor. We just have this negative 16 hanging out in front. There's no variable, so we're not going to worry about that. And so we need factors of negative 10 that sum to negative 9. So that's going to give me plus 1 minus 10, right? Because 1 times negative 10 would give me negative 10, and 1 plus negative 10 would give me the negative 9 in the middle. Okay, so that's good. All right, so when I come down here, I'm not going to worry about this because there's no variable. So there's no way. I can't have negative 16 equals 0. It doesn't make any sense. Here, if I set t plus 1 equal to 0, I get t equals -1. And here I get t minus 10 equals 0. So that's t equal to 10. Okay, now this is a word problem. Normally those would both be solutions for this, right? We would, -1 and 10 would both be solutions to this equation. However, we are talking about time here, so it does not make sense to have negative time, right? And so our answer is actually going to be this one, and we're going to say that the object's going to hit the ground in 10 seconds after being thrown. All right, if you need more help with factoring, or if you need help with solving quadratic equations, you can, of course, practice in My Math Lab. You can go to the study plan. Don't go too far, though, because they like to, about halfway in, give you really hard problems. So just stick with the earlier problems. Or you can go to khanacademy.org or Purple Math. Those are both really good websites where you can search for solve quadratic equations, and you'll get videos, you'll get practice problems, and then of course you can always go to your teacher or to the virtual tutors.